Yeah, we can add it.
We'll see how long we go, and then we'll consider it.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting for the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission for Thursday, February 7th. In attendance are regular members DeFrancisco, May, Sienna, Galdenzi, and Dulac. Our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from January 17th, which everybody received. If you want to take a quick look or make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, January 17th, 2019.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain. I was absent.
That passes 4-0 and Bill abstained. Before we move into the agenda, there's been a request to amend the agenda. If somebody would like to make a motion, there's old business, application 2019-2. The applicant is here. They're going to give us they want to do an overview. It's not actually, because it's going to require a public hearing down the road, but they just want to give us an overview, and they like to do it up front. So if somebody would
So
like.
moved. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll start off with application 2019-2.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Bob Wiedemann Jr. from Sunwood Development. I hope to someday be the builder on this property whenever we get the final approval done. With me today is Alan Temkin, who's the developer of the property. What I have in front of you is just real quick. I just want to give you an overview of kind of what the changes are going to be that you're going to see in more detail. As you said, we do a public hearing. I think we finally determined this is going to be a re-subdivision which requires a public hearing. So I think we've resolved that issue. So I won't spend a lot of time with you tonight, but just want to show you what we have originally proposed and approved a while back now on the right, which was a 600 or 700 foot cul-de-sac with 10 lots on the road. Originally done with well and septic. Then there was some conversation about how important everyone thought it was to have water brought up to the site. We have eventually kind of worked through with Regional Water Authority to bring water to the property. But as we started working on our numbers of both the water and the cost of the road, it started to just not make economic sense to do the road. So what we're showing on the left side now is what we're going to bring back to you at our public hearing, which is obviously already in submission, but in more detail in a few weeks. Is a 7-lot subdivision with front and rear lots. So we've eliminated the road, eliminated some lots, and we are still bringing water up to service all the lots. So those are really the significant changes. We have a little more open space. We obviously have a road now not being built so that the town won't be liable or responsible for the cost of maintaining that down the road. And I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm not showing the lots on the southern end of the property. Nothing is changing there other than providing them with water as opposed to wells. But everything on those other lots are staying exactly as they were. So that's really the extent of the changes. Unless you have questions, I'm not going to get into
I have a question. You're referring to the road. So you mean how you are going to do the road enhancements and kind of maybe take the curve out? Is that what you're referring to when you say you're not doing the road now? What do you mean?
I'm sorry.
By that?
The new cul-de-sac is not going to be built.
Oh, you don't mean the.
Yeah. So the work with Tucker
I thought you referred to road improvements. I thought you were talking.
So the work within Tucker Road, bringing the water up and some paving and
going to do that.
Some, I think, widening of the easement. I'm not sure we're actually changing the curve.
What you were doing before.
But everything on that southern portion of the road is staying exactly the same.
Good.
I understand.
On this northern end along Tucker Road, we're doing some storm drainage improvements, and I think that's the extent of the improvements up there. And I think we're putting some curving in on our side of the street.
I'm clear now. I misunderstood.
So That's it really on what we're proposing. We'll get into more details, and we'll have our engineer here to answer any technical questions at the next meeting or at the public hearing when it's scheduled. There is one small question, Carrie, I don't know if you've already resolved this or not, is the bonding issue. From a timing standpoint, we're in an awkward position. We need to record our subdivision map for previous approval. You guys have given us all the extensions we can ask for. So in order to preserve that approval, just in the, hopefully it doesn't happen, but the unfortunate situation that we're not able to get this new proposal approved, we'd have nothing, we'd be back at square one. We need to record the subdivision map. There's a question as to the timing of when the recorded map gets filed and the bond gets posted.
So, I'm just passing down the approval.
If you've already got this worked out,
I
you
have.
handle it.
No,
I'll
this
stay-
is
I'll stay out
perfect.
of it.
No, it's a good segue, and it's better to come from you. So, I'm just passing out the approval, because in the approval, condition number 8, which is on page 2, it specifically says, a bond shall be submitted in an amount to be determined by the town engineer with form and surety acceptable to the town attorney prior to the filing of the record Mylar map. So that's the issue, is that we've always required it before or at the same time as the Mylar is being recorded. So what we're asking, and I'll pass this down, is for a change to that condition, which would just say prior to the commencement of any improvements, which is allowed by statute, and I did ask the town attorney, and they thought that was fine
That would
as
be
well.
on the, you see, we wouldn't have to change this, it would be on the future one.
No, so this is where it's unique. So in order to preserve the approval that they received, they are going to record the approval with the road in it. So they have a Mylar, they have until the end of February to record that, to preserve that approval. This is the approval that's in front of you for 13 lots with a road, with the detention pond, everything. But they don't expect to build that. Based on the conditions that are required, we would require a bond in the full amount for sedimentation and erosion controls, which I'm forgetting the exact amount of that bond.
Do you recall the numbers?
Well, I'm
65.
sure
So
it'll-
65.
I'm sure it'll cover, this would cover any future one.
Right, well, so their concern though is that since they're not expecting to build, especially this time of year, they're wanting to wait on posting the bond until before they start any work. The condition that we have always had in place requires the bond at the time that they record the Mylar. Does that make sense?
Well, we're going to have
The public,
a new public hearing on a new subdivision. What's the value of
Correct.
keeping
why
this
can't,
one
well,
open?
why can't we wait until?
What's the value of keeping this open, other,
The only risk is.
because
we-
you might,
We don't get the new proposed subdivision approved.
oh,
Then we would
get-
lose
Yeah, I
the
understand.
original approval, we'd
Yeah,
have to
okay.
start that process over.
for that reason,
So we'd
okay.
like to record the map.
Yeah,
We can assure you that we're not gonna start construction because we don't wanna build
Yeah.
that plan.
I got you.
But we didn't wanna post the bond and then basically have to ask you to release the bond.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure how we do that because the bond is posted
Why
until
couldn't
we
you
do the
transfer-
work.
Well, why couldn't you just
Which we're
transfer it
never-
over to the, you can't transfer a bond?
It's different work, and because there's no road
Different
and no
amount, right.
detention pond, I assume the bonding requirements will be significantly different. So we just felt if we could just put that off and just keep it simple, we'll get the new one approved, and then whatever bond is required will be posted before that Mylar is recorded.
But if it,
yeah.
go ahead, Bill.
No,
I'm still not.
no, that, it made, I just needed to clarify. I understand why you wanna keep this open, that makes sense, in case you don't get
And that's
the
why.
revised one. If we deny it, then you have this one still. So you want to keep this, but in order to do that, you'd have to do the bond now, but you're asking us to kinda
Yes.
rework the wording.
Rework the wording so that the
So
bond
it's
wouldn't
not-
be required
Yeah.
until
Mhm.
prior to commencement of any
Yeah.
work.
Yep, that makes sense.
As
And
Gary
it-
said, the statute allows it, it was just the way your regulations have
Yeah.
been set up, you normally require at the same time as the recording of the Mylar.
And so the second thing you passed out, Carrie, is?
The proposed change, so if you look at condition 8,
Yep.
there's a strike through on prior to the recording of the Mylar, and instead it would be
How does that procedurally
prior to the commencement of
get
any.
into our previous approval though? 'Cause this has been approved?
So we would
get
just need a
stapled on.
motion,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
we would just need a motion
Just a procedural thing to
to,
make a motion
right.
to amend it?
right,
So amending a previously approved
yes,
decision,
yes.
we can do that, okay.
And we can change this isn't something that's in a regulation that sits there.
This is unique.
Right, because I did talk with the town
Yeah.
attorney, and they thought that that was okay,
Okay.
and again, it is
Yeah,
cited in
it's
the
reasonable.
statute, it was just, I think,
Yeah.
more of a
No,
security measure on the town side, that it's always been required at the time of the Mylar being recorded.
I mean, for me, it sounds like a reasonable request. I don't have a problem with it personally.
Are there any like slippery slopes in it, you know, setting a precedent and doing this for this, and down the road, people could come in and be like, well, you guys approved this, and you changed it at that time?
Possibly, but I think the key is that if they did start work without having a bond in place, we would be able to issue a cease and desist, and then have enforcement actions,
So we still have some protections.
right.
This was also unique too, because they wanted the water, then the water company said no, so they have to go with this, and then now they're back with water.
Yeah.
So, it was a little bit of the water company and not, there's a lot of nuances to this.
Well, and the other.
But it's a good point you make, though.
No, I
The
just,
other-
you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about the economics of it, and it's also, just as you're protecting yourself, I wanna make sure we still have the
Yeah.
protections in
Good point.
place as
Yeah.
a governing board.
Going forward. They'll also be, they are still before the commission, and there will be a public hearing because it's now considered a re-subdivision, since this parcel was approved for the creation of those lots. Now, since the lot lines are changing with this new proposal, it's considered a re-subdivision, which automatically requires a public hearing.
It wasn't intentional, we made this as complicated as possible.
Yeah, it's unique. Not complicated, it's unique.
Any other issues on this? Anything else that you need to add?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
So the only thing I'm gonna ask is, I know I wasn't there, so I'm gonna abstain. But I don't know if anybody else was, for this proposed change to it. I'm abstaining because I wasn't there for this, so I'm not gonna participate. But if you feel that you were there and recall that you were there, then I would, think you should act on it. If you weren't, then I would recommend abstaining.
Yeah, good point.
So if somebody,
Well, before we get to
Yeah.
that, I just had one quick question.
Oh.
So you're just changing the subdivisions, everything else like that. Are you guys still going forth with, regardless if it's this one or this one here, whatever it is, the other application of the culverts?
Yes, yeah, that has not changed, the two culverts across,
Yeah.
Farm River to the other side, to the east side, yes.
That hasn't occurred yet. You're gonna wait until probably
Right.
July and August when
That's-
the river level
That
is low
permit's
again.
under Mark DeLongo's name, but that's still scheduled to be done
Yeah, good
And-
point.
and-
part of
low
this whole
deep flow.
process, yes.
Okay.
anything else? If not, if somebody wants to make amendment of application 2018-6 to eliminate on bullet point number 8 prior to filling the record Mylar map.
I'd like to make a motion for application number 2018-6, number 8.
Oh, that's what I'm looking
And Carrie, just read the removal that
Yeah.
crush out.
Yeah.
Number 8, to remove, after, the town engineer will form and survey acceptable to the town attorney, the part prior to the filing of the recorded Mylar map.
Is there a second?
Second.
I couldn't tell whose hand went up first.
Ron
It was
second.
a
Okay,
tie.
I'll second it.
It's a good second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And that passes 4-0, and I abstain from that.
Thank you very much,
We're all set.
appreciate it, we'll see you next
soon.
month for the public hearing.
Yep.
Thank you very much for
So-
rearranging your schedule for us.
Yeah,
Just-
no problem.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
We'll set the public hearing for March 7th.
Okay.
So that will be advertised, and they'll receive a sign that they'll need to post. I think they've already picked up the sign.
I think we already have it.
And a butter
If I
notification.
remember correctly.
And then you have a wetlands application before the wetlands agency as well. Oh, and, sorry, one other note that I had is a question about the fee. So I think we had talked, maybe at the December 6th meeting. I don't know if you wanna wait and talk about it at
Yeah, let's
the
wait.
March meeting?
Yeah.
Because-
we haven't thought about it.
Yeah, let-
so we're happy
yeah.
to talk to
Okay.
you,
Yeah,
Carrie.
let's go
But
to
we
the
made
vote.
a decision on
Yeah.
that, though.
We made the
Made a
decision on
decision.
that, so.
Well,
Which
you
was
really,
in-
you can't, you gotta, the only time you can make the decision is, I mean, you can say what you think, but we can't make a decision until
So
we have a
Maybe
application in front of us.
reiterate it at the public hearing?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. 'Cause I don't, yeah.
If I recall, there might have been a decision made on waiving or adjusting the fees when we were just adjusting lines, but now that it becomes a re-subdivision, it may change your thoughts on
Yeah.
Carrie, so. We can
Okay.
certainly work this out before the meeting, so
Great,
we can
Yeah, I mean, we
bring
would-
our
you could- we-
suggestion before you.
Yeah, you can provide that information at the time of the public hearing. Yep.
That'd be
Okay.
fine.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, so we have the public hearing is, for application 2018-13-14 has been, it was continued. We left it open. We closed, I think we closed at the last meeting.
No, I don't think, oh, I wasn't at the last meeting.
Oh, not the last meeting, the one prior, I thought we
One
closed.
prior we did
Give me
continue.
a second.
No, we continued it, but we're debating on if we were gonna
Yes,
But,
we have
um,
to close it. Let me just,
do
I wanna
a
read something.
moratorium on it.
We're gonna what?
So there was,
Moratorium on it, if we're gonna do
Yeah,
another
but we would have to close the
moratorium on it.
public hearing first, that's why I wanna confirm that we did not do it. It doesn't matter, we can do it again. Okay, doesn't make a difference. So, the last time we were talking about, potentially putting a moratorium because of the potential changes in, coming out of Hartford.
Mhm.
So especially when it comes to recreational, maybe kind of coattailing on medical marijuana, so figure that our discussion was that we would consider the moratorium. I think Carrie did work up a draft.
so I was reminded with a moratorium, it's just like a text amendment. So first you would have to take some kind of action with the open applications.
Okay.
So what I would recommend, based on your conversation, is to withdraw the applications, unless you want to deny them, but I would
No.
maybe just say withdraw them. And then the next step would be to put together an application for a moratorium, and then have a public hearing on the moratorium.
Okay.
And then, so based on that, I have maybe this evening withdrawing the application, and then I would bring an application for a moratorium for February 21st, and then a public hearing on the moratorium March 21st.
Sounds good.
And then, depending on how many public hearings you have, if there's just one, then have the possible effective date of the moratorium April 8th.
Good.
Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. Do we have any information on to any timeline for the Capitol right now, for what they're doing with recreational?
Yeah, they said at the end of the year.
So for the end of the year,
Well,
they'll take
that's what they
anything
said.
sooner?
Well, I mean, it went through, it was in some kind of committee, I can't remember what it was, or a focus group or whatever, and then somebody came out and says that they would hope to, have it done by the end of the year.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see what really happens when it hits the floor and stuff, but that's what they said. So the first thing is, so,
Do we need a?
we need to close the public hearing.
Would you wanna, I don't know if there's any comments?
Would anybody, first, before I close the public hearing on either one of these applications, would anybody like to speak? Come on, somebody. Just, tell us your experiences. No. I'm sorry.
They don't remember.
I'm a little tired. Yeah, really. Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Do you wanna just
Second.
state which applications?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, for both, do both.
Yeah, both applications, 2018-13
Stickler to it.
and 14.
Did you get both of them, Ron? I'm sorry. Did you close both of them?
Yes.
Okay, there's a second.
A second.
All in favor of closing both applications?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So now that's done. So now, would somebody like to make a motion to withdraw both applications? Ryan, you're doing such a good
Yeah,
job.
I know,
Yeah,
come
you're
on,
good.
I
I'm
might as
leading the
well-
charge.
Yeah.
I might as well go with it. I'll make a motion that we withdraw application 2018-13 and 14.
I
Is there a s-
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay. Okay, so we are down to new business, very quickly. Application 2019-1, site development plan for 28 Branford Road.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors in Madison. And with me tonight is
Good evening, Ken Borison, Kenneth Borison Architects, 315 Peck Street, New Haven.
I have, Carrie asked me to bring 3 sets of revised plans tonight.
Perfect.
I left them, I did not fold them. I thought it might be easier. Hopefully it's easier for you guys to
I can never fold them back
take
anyways.
Yeah.
Do I actually look at them on your table?
Carrie, do you need a copy?
Yes, please.
All right.
I've got one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good.
She gets a special one.
Right here in the middle.
She
always gets the
special.
Yeah, she's a stickler for this, and then
Yep.
she gets a special thing.
She gets microphone.
I gotta share with Bill.
Exactly.
It's like,
Like, I'm dinner from the same plate.
Saving trees. Can I have your name again?
Push the old arms. Have to wait
Yeah.
5 minutes, I won't remember.
Rose's work. Right? Right around here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I went down there, I went, yeah.
oh, who's doing it?
Yeah. It's all woods, I don't know, I don't think it's slow down. Yeah, I looked at it the other day.
So this is a site at, the street address is 28 Branford Road, State Route 139. Right across from the Rose family property where the new winery building is under construction. Winery building. There is, I don't know if you're all familiar with the site, there is a single-family residential home on the site. It's blue, gray in color, and a couple of outbuildings. And the site's about 5 acres in size, mostly wooded, other than the developed portion. The plan is to take down that home and the outbuildings and construct a professional medical office park. As you can see on the plans, 2 buildings, approximately 12,500 or so, maybe, square feet in footprint. A little less than that, it's 12,000 or so. Each of them, the footprint of each of those 2 buildings. Ken will show you the buildings in a minute, and the 2 buildings are, as you can see on the plan, are separate from each other but connected by a second floor bridge. And beneath that bridge the proposal is to have a walkway that runs between the 2 buildings, connects the parking areas on both sides. The proposed parking, as you can see, is kind of looks like a racetrack. It's a loop around the buildings. The site access drive will be where the residential homes driveway is today. The buildings will be served by public water. There's a water main on the east side of Route 139 by the municipal sanitary sewer system. We received approval from the WPCA a couple of evenings ago to make that connection to the sewer system, and then public utilities, power and telephone communications utilities. The 2 challenges with this site, we think, are intersection sight distance. When you pull out of that driveway, if you look to when you're pulling out, if you pull out of the residential homes driveway today, if you look to the left towards, northbound towards Route 80, you can see for a mile. But looking southbound down towards Valley Road and School Ground Road, you've got a curve in the road. There's the cut slope there, the rock that you can see. So what we call driveway intersection sight distance is extremely limited. So that's one challenge with this site. The posted speed limit on State Route 139 is 40 miles per hour. There's an advisory speed around that curve. I don't know if you've seen the yellow warning advisory signs at 35 miles per hour. We all, including me.
What is it?
35.
35.
Yeah. It's human nature that people drive fast. So we need to make improvements to the driveway intersection sight distance there. I've got a plan I'll show you in a second that does that. We've met with the DOT on the site. We've sent plans to the DOT. We're awaiting comments from them. So that's one of the challenges is driveway intersection sight distance. The other is stormwater and stormwater management. There's an unusual, I think I would call it, situation on this site. The state drainage system outlet from State Route 139 discharges on this site. You may be able to see it on sheet 3, the existing conditions plan. Might be the cleanest sheet for you to look at. So there's a, is it okay if I come up? I can.
Please.
That's exactly. There's this pipe. It's a 15-inch pipe onto the property.
Wow.
And it discharges to this building in the rear off of this site. So there's a pipe for a certain length, and then it's an open channel. And right at the property line, it goes into another pipe and actually goes beneath that building on the adjoining property.
Then where does it go from there?
Well, that's the problem. Blakesley Pre-Stress adjoins the next parcel to the west. Right at the common line between the parcel that adjoins us and Blakesley Pre-Stress is a basin. It's not a ditch, it's not a swale, it doesn't flow, it doesn't have any slope, it doesn't run in any direction. It's basically a depression in the ground. And all the stormwater goes into that depression and over time infiltrates into the ground. There's no positive outlet. It's right on the common line between the people behind us and Blakesley Pre-Stress. Blakesley was nice enough to let us on their property, and they walked the site with us. The people behind us have let us walk the site. We brought the state back there. So it's not a positive stormwater outlet, and it's not a good situation. So not to mention the stormwater goes underneath the building behind us. Piped under the building. I assume at some point the building got added onto, and they just built over the storm drain.
Do they have an easement for that?
The state, no. So the state's easement is very, very common. The state's actual easement ends at the end of the pipe, and after the end of the pipe, they have a right to drain.
Right to drain.
And it's undefined. There's no bearings and distances, and there's no defined limits to that. They just have the right to drain. Wow. How all of this happened over the years, who knows? But it's a bit of an unusual situation. After talking to the property owners, Blakesley, walking both properties, we don't feel comfortable bringing stormwater that way.
Yes.
So we are proposing to bring it in the opposite direction, back out to State Route 139, where it'll connect to the state drainage system, go down Valley Road, and discharge on the southern side of Valley Road, where there's an existing discharge today. So we're simply, if you look at sheet 4 or 5, you'll see where we're making a connection to the state drainage system.
All right, so where's the connection?
Just sending it all the way around.
Here's the.
So here's where it is now.
You gotta send it all the way behind the building?
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a second, but there's where we make the connection to the state drainage system. Yeah, right there. Push it. That's where we connect to the state drainage system, then it goes down Valley Road.
Then it's coming on.
So it goes down Valley Road, where does it head off from Valley Road?
Right there.
I think so.
See
No,
that?
but where does it go from Valley Road?
Oh, it goes, into, it leaves North Branford. Actually, it goes into Branford, and ultimately discharges to the Branford River.
Isn't it?
There's
There's
a
a swamp.
commercial park, there's a large wetland,
Mhm.
and then is an industrial, probably it was an industrial subdivision. What's the name of the,
Research, right.
Research Road? or-
Yep.
Drive or something,
Drive,
yep.
something like that, in Britain, in Branford.
Mhm.
So,
Or do they?
we,
Put it in perspective,
Speak his
right?
his lingo.
Exactly.
Or do Vegas.
what's that?
There's
brewery.
a brewery,
Oh. So we can't just take this relatively undeveloped site, except for the single-family home and their driveway and a few outbuildings, and build these 2 new buildings and all that parking area without having a stormwater management system. So we need to address water quality, as well as we need to reduce the peak rates of runoff that are gonna occur from our proposed development. So we have a large, if you look at sheet 11, we have a large subsurface stormwater infiltration system that goes in the rear parking lot. That's what those 2 large rectangles are that you see on the plan.
Behind the buildings.
So that, this large rectangle, see that, and this one.
Oh, okay, these two here, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
You said you were page 11.
She So this is what, this is what goes underground. So we have large 4-foot diameter, multiple 4-foot diameter pipes below the parking lot to store the water. And then we have an outlet control structure that releases the water at a prescribed rate, so that we don't just take all the stormwater runoff from the building and the pavement and just directly discharge it to the state system. So we have an extensive stormwater management system proposed for the site. When I said earlier, we met with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we met not only about driveway intersection site distance, but about stormwater. We walked those 2 properties to the rear. We talked to them about connecting to the state system. I have sent these plans and a stormwater management report to the DOT for their review. I've also met with the Branford town engineer and reviewed the plans and the storm drainage with him, because you will, of course, refer this application to Branford because they're within 500 feet, and other reasons that the statute requires. So I actually sat down with him to review the plans so he'd have a better understanding of it. We have not received comments from him yet, the Branford town engineer or the DOT, but we hope to within the next 2 weeks before we come back. We assume we'll be coming back to you in 2 weeks. So those are the 2 challenges we think in redeveloping this site: the driveway intersection site distance and stormwater management.
For the stormwater management, so how extreme did you guys engineer these for worst case scenario on we get like a really bad rainstorm, or like we get like in August that we had this past year? Can they withhold that much, or will you have to just constantly release it, and can the street pipes handle that if we have rain events like that continuously?
So there are standards of practice for, there's certain rainfall events that engineers use to design these systems. And for years, you've probably heard this from other engineers, but for years, the amount of rain, the typical rain event period we look at is 24 hours for design. And for years, there were published rainfall amounts, rainfall depths, for different probability storms, 24-hour storms. Those changed a number of years ago, increased significantly to be reflective of the increased precipitation that we now see. So this system is designed in accordance with those current standards. However, I should also say these systems are, they're designed, the design standard is to handle a certain frequency or probability storm. There's certain storms, for instance, what we call a 100-year event, that technically means there's a 1% chance in any one year of that storm of a certain magnitude, a certain rainfall amount to be equaled or exceeded. So it doesn't mean I'm sure you may have heard this before, it doesn't mean the storm happens every 100 years. It means it's got a 1% chance, 1 in 100. So that kind of storm event, these kind of site storm drainage systems are not designed to handle. So typical commercial site development, the Big Y project on Route 80, the plaza up at the top of the hill, where McDonald's is, that kind of thing. They're not designed for that storm, but they're designed for a 25-year storm, which has a different probability of occurring in any one year. So that's what this is designed for. After that, the water can't even get in the catch basin grades. There's just so much water.
Yeah.
So, but it's the important part is it's designed to current standards and current rainfall depths to reflect the kind of rain that we have now, kind of precipitation events that we have now.
Why does it have to go like loop around behind the building? I kind of know the site a little bit, but isn't there a more direct line that can go down? I know it's kind of rocky and stuff over there, I believe.
Yeah, it's not that actually. What drives that is, so it's a medical office park. There are potentially going to be people who need assistance getting from their cars into the building and back out again. We have, I think there are 12 sidewalk ramps all the way around the building, as well as what we call now reserved spaces. We used to call them handicapped or accessible parking spaces. And the grading of the site has to be such that along the full length of those two buildings, those two buildings are at the same elevation, and the grading has to be mild in general, to use a simple term, to be accessible at all the entrances all the way around the building. And the only way to do that, or the only way I could think to do that, was to grade it the way it's graded, and that grade the parking lot the way it's graded. That drove where the stormwater has to be carried. So it's the site design that drives it, really.
Can you speak a little bit about what you're proposing to do to improve the sight line? You said you submitted something to DOT.
Yes. Yeah, I'll bring this up. I don't know if you'll be able to see this back here, but this is the sight line, the driveway intersection and sight line demonstration plan that we submitted to DOT. So this is so there are, based on the speeds that cars travel, vehicles travel, there are standards for how far the driver sitting at the exit needs to be able to see in that distance. In this particular case, it's 555 feet. So what we do, there's a standard place for the driver's eye, and there's a standard place for the object, a car, a vehicle in the road. And we draw a straight line between them, and we plot a profile along that line of sight. And you can see that dashed line is the existing ground, and the solid line is where we have to cut the existing ground down to in order to be able to see, if that makes sense.
So the permanent entrance is gonna be different than the temporary construction entrance?
Yes, yeah, the temporary construction entrance is right at grade. It's a lawn, if you drive by there, it's a lawn, and it's easily, contractor could drive in there tomorrow without any real work. So, so this is the.
So it's taken down the hillside.
Yes, and this is a standard type of plan that the DOT needs to see. So, I'm sure you've seen it before, it's set on the administration. So this is submitted as part of the record of our application, as well as to the Department of Transportation.
Thank you.
I should talk about parking a little bit. On the title sheet the first sheet is a schedule of zoning standards. And there are I'll go by memory, I think it's 223 parking spaces are required for this use by the zoning regulations. And we are proposing to construct 172 of the 223. And we'd like to ask, I think it's under section 58, Carrie, of the zoning regs.
Yep, 53.8, yeah.
53.8. We'd like to ask the commission to, I think you have some discretion in the total number of parking spaces required. So we did a parking demonstration plan to show that we could actually construct 172 if we had to. I'm sorry, 223. So the dashed parking here and the dashed parking here, we're proposing that be reserved parking spaces.
The dash is on this side.
There's
There, okay.
dashed here and
Yeah, I
dashed
see
here.
that, yep.
Yeah, if you can see that.
Yep.
So what we'd like to ask is that we construct 172 and that the remaining 51 are in reserve and they could be constructed if we had to. And we're basing
Yeah,
that.
I'm basing, I was just gonna ask what
This
you're
is-
basing it.
This is part of the record also of the application. We're basing that on observations at other medical office parks. There's one in Guilford on State Route 77, just north of the police station, on the opposite, on the east side. I can't remember, Guilford Glen, I think it's called. And we've been up there counting, we've got information on how much space they have, how much office space they have, how many parking spaces they have, and we've looked at the utilization. How often is it full? And it's not, never actually, in the times that we've been there to count, is it full. There's another facility on Route 1 in Guilford, and we've done the same thing there. So we think that 172 parking spaces that we're proposing to construct will be adequate. But under your regulations and at Carrie's request, we have to show that we could actually build 223 if we need to.
The additional 50, if you do not, if you don't require it, what, is that gonna be paved and then you just have to line it, or is it just gonna be left alone, wooded, grass or whatever, and then if you have to do it, then you would go and develop that?
The latter.
Or create it?
The latter. We'd like to propose not to do anything. Don't grade it off, don't pave it, don't gravel it, just leave it in its natural state. Yeah. But again, we had to demonstrate that they would fit, that you could actually build up.
How many are that area to the right versus the strip in the front or in the back?
The reserve parking spaces?
What's the reserve?
35 in the rear and 16.
To the right?
16.
Mhm.
Yeah, 35 and 16. You'll see the
35
numbers
are in
in
the
the
back.
circle.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So, my God is correct, that's what our regulations say, and one example where this has been allowed in prior site plans is the Dollar General.
Mhm.
So if you remember that, they had shown on the plan that they could construct the parking if they needed it.
Who decides?
We do.
You.
No, I mean,
Oh.
if we were to go with a smaller number, and let's say the place is crowded, and do we have any fallback and saying, you know, you're creating a traffic jam?
Yes. So, this hasn't happened since I've been here, but I would imagine what would happen is it would become a zoning issue, so maybe people would start parking on the street, or there would be some zoning matter where there would be non-compliance, so
You could
then they
only
would
wish.
be, they would be back before the commission,
Mhm.
most likely. And one of the things that the regulation does say is that if there's any change of use of the building, that they would have to demonstrate that they don't need the parking as well. So you can't just carry this over from professional offices to something else that may require more parking.
Do you have any more than just that one data point of Glen something, whatever, Guilford Glen?
Guilford Glen, there's another.
You mentioned a couple, but you only mentioned.
Just two facilities, yeah.
So you
And
observed two facilities and.
Yeah, and the applicant also talking to physicians that are planning to, you know, to lease space here also.
Okay.
One question I have is on the parking, when it comes to handicap parking. On the plans you have, or restricted parking, you have them separated. Why wouldn't you wanna keep like a bunch of them together? Like I'm starting to see more and more places now have 3 restricted altogether, and then you have your regular park. Is there any reason why you broke it up this way? I see different entrances, I see that, but I don't know if you would gain 2 up together, if that's worth considering at all.
Actually, the reason you hit on it, the first thing you said, I wanted to spread them all the way around the building, because as you can see, there are multiple entrances to this building on the long elevation as well as the ends. So I don't see any advantage to them being all together, and to be honest, I don't like the way it looks, aesthetically, because you have to sign all of them. You have to have sign at every single one of them. And when you put them all together, it kind of ends up looking like a sign farm. So, but that's just my design opinion, but the main reason is to spread them all the way around the building at all, you know, adjacent, as close as we can to each of the entrances, so that now there's multiple, you know, points of access that are accessible.
So this touches on to, what Harry was thinking.
No.
But you reduced the amount of parking, or requested to reduce the amount of parking. Does that take into account the number of handicap or reserved spots that you would need for that, or does that also get reduced for the number that you have? How does that get impacted?
So the number of we call them reserve now,
Yeah,
reserve parking spaces we have, it meets the requirement for the 172 that we're constructing. So if we were to have to construct the reserved parking, let's see, we got 35 and 16, so we would need 2 more reserve spaces. You need 1 for every 25 parking spaces. Actually, we need 3, because we would be a bit over, if you do the math, we need 3 actually additional reserved accessible parking spaces.
Maybe this is off on a tangent, but this campus is basically a primary care type of facility, not an urgent care.
I understand it to be primary care, not urgent care, to my knowledge. Yeah, I can get a clarification on that. Yeah.
I guess will ambulances be there?
Yeah, that's the key there. Will there be?
Emergency?
Not to my
Ambulance.
knowledge, unless, of course, someone makes a call, but no. I do not believe, I will clarify for you before the next meeting, but I do not believe it's intended to be an urgent care facility, but let me clarify.
There's no entrance for it.
Yeah, that would change your design.
There's no entrance for it.
Yeah, there's no like emergency room, you know, emergency entrance to the building at all. This is a medical office, professional office park, so they're all, yeah, outpatient medical is, I guess, a better way to describe it. But I will clarify that for you.
Have you assessed the traffic impacts?
Yes.
Impacts to traffic, yeah?
Yes, and I've got a couple more things to tell you, that's one of
Okay,
them.
sorry.
Actually, I've almost forgotten the traffic.
I-
We've hired, one of McBroom's traffic engineering department to assist us, and they're in the process of
Oh,
reviewing these
good.
plans, and they'll be out at the site, and they're
Good.
gonna write a traffic letter,
Good,
prior to the next meeting.
all right, good.
Yeah.
It counts or anything?
No, they won't do counts, they'll use existing count data and based on standards of practice and their experience as traffic engineers. And they'll check my plans, make sure the intersection site distance is proper, turn radius is proper.
Yeah, this is a two-story building, correct?
Yes, two floors, remember the second,
Right, it's
cantilever,
got a second
second floor bridge. I've got one quick thing, maybe lighting. So there are, hard to see, but there's a detail on one of the sheets. Can't remember the sheet number of the site lighting. It's gonna be a pendant style light. A post and a shepherd's crook or bishop's crook arm, so the light hangs down, pendant style light. It will meet current light standards for glare and trespass and no upload. I hope to have a photometric plan tonight. It didn't come in time, but I will have one prior
Good.
to the next meeting.
Here's sheet 13.
LED?
Yes. There's a full landscape plan also, in the set of drawings. Seven, maybe?
Yep, 7.
Seven? So we have some 20, I think it's not
4.
24 trees.
Right.
That are proposed to be planted.
So here there's a gravel driveway to the right, what's that going to, this area and back?
It actually, it goes straight back. It's actually part of, further up 139 is Enterprise Drive, if you
Yeah.
ever see the sign.
Yeah.
That's actually, Enterprise Drive, actually, if you look under Gen S, it actually loops out, and that's where it loops out to.
And then what's over here, is this a
There's a
residence?
home, there's a single-family home there. Yep.
Anybody have anything else? Because otherwise we're gonna have Carrie.
Do you wanna see there's the architectural
Oh,
design of
okay,
the-
yeah, I'm sorry.
The
I didn't know if you
building's
were gonna
actually
provide,
good
I
for
didn't know
it.
if you were gonna do those tonight, or, okay.
Now, Mike's done all the hard work, I'll just show you the pretty pictures. So, let's bring it a little closer. It's actually one building technically, even though it's two structures with a bridge. And the reason we did that was to not have to put 2 stairs in each of the structures. It becomes rentable space. So essentially, the different entry points, as you can see, around the building, different office, doctor outpatient offices that can either be combined, there's a larger piece, or separate. And the bridge at the second level, again, allows you not to have to put a stair here and a stair here, because the exit is here and here, you have the 2 exits. So again, it's 2 stories, business use, some storage in the basement, fully sprinkled. Elevations, honestly, there's just 2 elevations, because there's a short elevation and a long elevation. 35 foot at the ridge, meet the requirement, cupolas on each piece. And then it's an arts and crafts style, gives some character to it. Render, perspective views kind of coming in from the road, again, a little bit over planting, but, so again, each entrance is a porch, you can go into one unit or another unit. This is an angled view of it, kind of focused on the shorter side. And then an angled view focused on the longer side.
And that top view is what you anticipate the view being from 139 heading north,
Yeah.
right?
Right. And, you know, again, breaking it up allows light to a lot of the units, right? You're not having this huge building where the inside is not lit. The cupola is actually also, when you are on the second floor, you know, that is where the cupola is, so you actually get light right in the center of the hallway of each of those.
Can I see that, this, the one right behind that?
This one.
Closer up?
You wanna look at the birds?
Yeah. Yeah. No, just kidding.
Where do you have, the elevators on this?
So this is
So
coming
the
up.
elevators are, there's an internal corridor,
Looks like.
Mm-hmm.
so you can come in this entrance,
Yeah.
there's an elevator here.
Or next to the stairs?
Yeah, right there.
Alright.
This is actually the first floor, right? So you come in here, and then it goes up to the second floor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Provide us with any referrals that we've received at this point.
Yes, so referrals. The zoning officer has a comment that I have on the agenda later this evening, but the comment is to consider looking at a text amendment to reduce the setback for the sign by the road to 10 feet. So currently, this application doesn't have a location for a sign because the setback requirement in an industrial zone is, I believe, 50 feet, which is just so far back into the property that it doesn't make sense. And for a variance, there's really no hardship per se, so that we can talk about at a later point this evening.
Text amendment?
Mhm.
Would, yeah, text amendment to the industrial zone to allow.
To change the setback requirement for the sign, so.
But don't state roads have also a certain setback for signs that you have to consider?
No, just from, the property. From, Acting Police Chief James Lovelace, I have reviewed the accompanying documents regarding planning and zoning, application, 2019-1. I feel that if this project were completed in accordance with the documents that have been provided for my review, there are no objections by the department. And we have referred it to the town of Branford, as Mike mentioned. We haven't heard back, and they did receive approval from the WPCA for connection to the sewers. Fire Marshal Burnell did say that a preliminary plan review was done in accordance to NFPA, Connecticut General Statute, Connecticut Fire Safety and Fire Prevention Codes. One of their recommendation is that a fire hydrant be located at the driveway entrance of the medical facility, which would mean that that's not shown on the plan right now, but maybe that's something that we could look to include in the revision. That's so that they would have water on that side of 139. If there were to be some emergency in that building, they wouldn't be blocking 139. Because they do have to bring the water across 139. They also are saying that the fire department sprinkler connection at or near the building would be a double Siamese standard thread style. A Knox box key system is required at the entrance to the building. Fire alarm system is required. And annunciator panels will be at the entrance foyer for the building, and a sprinkler system, which is what they're planning on anyway. Some other details, so I believe that you have my memo, which is kind of going through the site plan requirements. So there are no wetlands on the property. They are planning to discharge to the wetlands in Branford, so that's why we're waiting for the referral from Branford on that. We went over the details of the buildings. It meets setbacks, height, coverage. Right now on the plan, they're showing a retaining wall. I don't know if you talked about that at all.
I did.
So that may change slightly, correct, depending on if you, so there's some coordination with the property to the west, JJJ Property Management LLC. So that may change, but right now there is a retaining wall there.
Is it okay to
Sure,
explain?
yeah.
We actually reached out to the property owners behind us again, and we have a meeting set up with them this coming Monday afternoon, to show them the plans. They, over the years, when we did our property boundary survey, we found that it may not be the current owners of the property to the rear of us, but somebody excavated onto our parcel of land, and we'd like to put that earth back. So right now, we're showing a retaining wall because we don't actually have the rights to do that, and we don't want to complicate the application. But after we meet with them, we might be able to acquire those rights and be able to grade onto their property and put that land back.
And then eliminate the retaining wall.
Correct.
Also on the plan, one of the details is the addition of the timber and beam posts. So that's proposed, I believe, on both sides, correct, Mike?
On the revised plans, it is carried, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's a detail showing that. So that would be along the perimeter of the parking area, just as more decorative, but also just kind of a guide, visual guide.
Yeah, it provides some, it makes drivers feel more comfortable when, when they park. It's you've all seen timber post and rail fence, big square timber posts and a really hefty rail. I'm sure it's probably in some of the town parks, I would guess. Okay.
The lighting plan, we'll see how that turns out, but the fixture, I think, looks good. My only request was just to make sure that it's full cutoff. Otherwise, I thought it looked good and met regulation. DOT, we're waiting for comments. The parking was already reviewed. Let's see, what else? Utilities. A maintenance plan will be included, right, for maintenance of the stormwater system, because we just want to make sure that that's maintained by the property owner going forward. Regarding the landscaping, everything meets the requirements as far as the number of trees. One of the things that our regulation says, though, is that there may be a tree every 10 spaces. However, just the way that this is laid out, it's hard to have one tree every 10 spaces, but they still provide the adequate number of trees on the entire plan. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other component of this that came to my attention is, you'll notice on the plan, there's actually, and if you drive by there, here's a street view, but there's an existing stone wall along 139, and it's shown on the plan here. So as part of the landscaping of the site and just kind of curb appeal, one thought was to talk with the applicant about maybe moving that stone wall and maybe even recreating it, just to keep the character of the town. It's an entranceway to the town. We don't have anything in our regulations that would require it, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention and something to think about for the next meeting. And if you I would encourage you to drive down there and just take a look, because Rose Orchard did redo their stone wall, and it just, again, it's an entranceway to the community. It looks really nice, keeps the character of the community. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point.
One potential challenge, though, that Kurt brought to my attention, which is totally valid, is that we have the sightline component now as well.
Well, actually, you and I talked about this too. There's going to be extensive grading along the site, so the stone wall's going to get blown away.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be, it would, as Carrie and I talked about, it would actually have to be reconstructed. I doubt, Carrie, that we'd have to check it to see if it actually would obstruct the site distance.
Based on the height, I see.
Yeah, based on the height. But there's no question it would have to get rebuilt, because we've got, as you saw in that plan I showed you, we've got extensive grade along the frontage.
And for me, to Carrie's point, it's an entranceway to the town, so we just want to make it look appealing, so.
And I think the only kind of, well, this is fairly easy, but one thing just to think about is snow storage and where that would occur. especially on the southern part of the property, because you're pretty close to the properties to the south. Again, just something to think about. And then finally, with the clearing that needs to happen and the blasting and the processing of the rock, we would just want to know, I think, how much material needs to be removed or how much material is being brought onto the site, the timing of all of that, and then if you're planning on processing the rock on site, what that looks like, how long that will take, dust control, all of those things. So that was everything that I had.
Will there be blasting that's required?
Yes.
I saw it in the notes.
Yep. Interestingly, there's obviously rock outcrops on the site, and we show them on our plan, we label them, but when we went out to do some test pits for stormwater purposes, we were hoping we could infiltrate stormwater, but the soils are not amenable to that. But we excavated where the buildings are gonna be constructed right at the base of huge rock outcrops, and we're able to go down 8 feet plus. So the rock, in those locations, the rock must be very vertical. We expected to hit it at 2 feet, and we were over 8 feet deep with no rock. So although there definitely will be rock removal and blasting, it's not as extensive as we would have thought, as we first thought.
Alright, so unless there's anything else, then we'll just continue this to, that's what
I have one quick question. Carrie, do we know, how old that stone wall is?
No, I haven't looked to research it.
I was just curious on that.
I don't know.
Does this go to public hearing?
No.
No. Just a safe plan. So are we good? Yep. All right, so we'll continue this to the next meeting, which is,
21st.
February 21st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's part of our farm? Yeah, it's 300 years old.
375.
Yeah.
I just, now I know that.
Yeah, one thing is this discussion. Forget about unraveling.
Yeah, it's close. That works.
So, you want to just do everything under your town planning report?
Yes.
Okay.
So one thing I'd like to add, since Don Capelli's here, is this addition.
What is it, under other business or town planning?
You can do it under town planner's report. Yes, amend the agenda, please, to add discussion regarding 224 Foxen Road.
I move to amend the agenda to add under town planner's report 224 Foxen Road discussion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That passes 4-0. None opposed.
So this is, I'll just show you this plan. This is more just for your information. This is a revised site plan, so what you're looking at is the existing mobile home park
Okay.
on Foxen Road and Totucket Road. So this is Totucket Road. The new building at 190 Totucket Road is right here. So this proposal, the zoning officer and I have looked at, and this is the RV part of the mobile home park. So
Mhm.
these are the more like transient vehicles. So what they're proposing to do is just intensify the use, not change it at all. But right now this is wooded right here, and they're looking to just add these 3 spaces. They're going to connect to the sewer, which they need to go before WPCA. I don't think that you've done that yet.
Not yet, no.
So they connect to sewer, but because of the change, we just asked for a revised site plan. and so they'd have to fill out a zoning permit just to show that they meet setbacks, which they show in this plan. So this is really just more kind of FYI, in case you have any questions. But, again, through zoning, it's a non-conforming use, but if you intensify the use and not expand it, you're okay, so they're just intensifying it on the existing footprint.
This parcel is right across the street from the other corner that is for sale?
Adjacent to, well, so they're selling
Sort of.
the property on the corner, the north side, north of 80, there's
Yeah.
Don Felly selling that, but then there's
Actually-
also where the Red Deli is, that also is for sale.
That's across the street.
Oh, just to the south side.
Yeah, but this is a separate parcel.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not actually for sale.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're just
Right,
looking
for
for
lease.
a lease on
It's
that.
this piece right here.
That Don owns
Yeah.
is for lease. I'm sorry, not for sale, for lease. So, anyway,
Just trying to grip where all the different parcels are.
right.
So the one he's gonna lease is across the street from the hairdresser.
Okay, yep.
Across to Tuckett.
Yep.
Yep. So, didn't know if you had any questions or,
Pretty straightforward. Yeah.
okay. Good.
Thanks, Don, for coming. Well, just stay for the,
For the
Ron's,
entertainment.
Ron's famous ending every meeting. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so then summary of the POCD workshop, I think most of you were there. And I haven't received a summary report from them at this point, but turnout was decent for,
This afternoon, what was that?
oh, the survey
Was it the survey?
that I sent?
Oh, something came from somewhere. Thought it was on this.
I just sent the steering committee the survey draft.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was. I got something, I thought it said.
So the next step is to release a survey regarding the town center project. So that's what the consistent name is. It's been called town campus, but now we're calling it town center, I guess. That's what the architect
This is a
was telling
separate
me.
survey.
Separate survey, talking about moving the police station to a different parcel, maybe over time adding the town hall, maybe ambulance services, maybe even, again, like 40 years down the road, adding like a community center or creating a town center
So,
based around municipal services, but.
two questions on that. Do you know when they had the January 29th event, did they poll like the group of people that showed up on like who they were in town or stuff like that? If they were
No.
part of like committees or just members of the public or?
No,
It
it is a good
interesting
point.
to see that dynamic and the results of that.
Right,
and
no,
then-
it's a valid point because it was a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah,
A lot of people on boards and commissions, a lot of people who are involved, mainly the land trust, wetlands, planning and zoning. Not a lot of families, it didn't seem like, or because Trish and I were talking about, there wasn't a lot of reaction to the schools and investment in the schools.
Well, it's funny you mentioned schools, because that's my second point, is how with new development with the state now, I know there's one of the stations asked what did the communities want to invest in, and there's like 2 or 3 different things that asked about schools. Now, hypothetically saying now something happens with the school systems, would that change the view of the town campus or the new town center?
It could, and I think the point of the POCD and this survey is that it's a fluid document. So it's a 10-year just general vision. It's not even pie in the sky necessarily, it's just a vision. So what should really happen is that we revisit the POCD even every 5 years, not wait 10 years. 10-year timeline and mark is like the full revamp, but I think 5-year is like, let's check in and see if things have changed drastically. And the goal with this POCD, for me anyway, is to have maybe not like a monthly meeting with you all, but quarterly, and then bring in someone from the land trust, wetlands, other stakeholders, maybe even Board of Ed, just to have an ongoing conversation to say, okay, here's our action items, have we completed them, where do things stand, does this action item not make any sense anymore? So it's a more of a working document.
And just one thing to add on to what you mentioned, Alex. I mean, when there's a new administration, they throw out all these ideas.
Yes.
Just like even, recreational marijuana, they say, well, by the end of the year, we'll see how that happens. Same thing with the schools where they say, well, maybe we need more regionalization. Again, that could be pie in the sky, that could be, 1,000 years down the road. So when we do the plan, when we do the plan of development, if, let's assume that if building a new school in town, that's our assumption that we're gonna build. If we, used everything that came out of Hartford, and we wouldn't be doing anything, to be honest with you, because they're not gonna necessarily do anything. Sure. So.
Another item I should mention is that I did meet with a group of farmers about the farm events. So Alex, Joe, Al Rose, Willie Delacamera, we all met just to talk about, is there a desire and a need to revisit the regulations? And the takeaway from that meeting was, no, at this time, we're just gonna kind of continue status quo.
What's the status quo?
Which, no text amendment, just, if you have, hay rides, pick your own, everyone's just operating as they're currently operating. There's no desire among that group to do a text amendment. That being said, I met with Ryan Van Wilgen separately, and so he may be pursuing a text amendment on his own to look at hosting weddings specifically at their location.
So that, what I kind of wrote up, I would like to pursue that. Because I want to, when it comes to entertainment, it's great, that the farm, breweries, wineries are gonna do the status quo. But I think we need to put something in place so we don't have to, entertain each text amendment from this person, from that person who wants to try to do something. I mean, my biggest concern is, I want to see these properties be successful, in these other things like breweries, wineries, whatever, but also the most important part would be the quality of life around them. So outdoor events during the day, non-music, those are just as normal. But now you start adding them in there and going, Friday and Saturday nights, or whether it's a wedding, and so we know there's echo alleys. So I would say I would like to at least start considering to move forward with our text amendment instead of waiting for somebody else's.
I thought ours was attempting to carve out and not include as a farm event these hay rides and things. Remember
Yes.
we were trying to make a clear distinction that hay rides and things like that, the benign things, for lack of a better term, benign things were what we wanted to get our handle on, just what Harry said, weddings every Friday and Saturday, so that's something we wanted to get our handle on.
And I don't have it in front of me, but it's not to eliminate them, but if you're gonna do something, do inside of, I'll give you some highlights. It's a permanent structure that's approved, so it can't be a tent. I'm just talking about music in general. It's, if you need a temporary structure because you're doing something outside, different story. I'm talking about music and different things like that. Acoustic and amplified music, separating that. Acoustic music during the day is probably not a big deal, but at night, a amplified band is a whole different ballgame. So I kind of wrote those kind of bullet points on that. So instead of waiting for somebody to come through and saying, wait, you know what, we definitely don't want to go this way, why don't we maybe, I'm not sure when he's coming forward. If he's coming forward in the next couple of weeks, then we'll never have one ready.
I also like us doing it because often the public perception when somebody comes in with a text amendment, it looks extremely biased, and we constantly have to sit here and say, you know, this is for all, you know, this is for everybody, all future, so it just kinda eliminates that little bit of confusion if we do it, you know, it eliminates that,
We
you know,
can-
constant input and, you know.
I think we still,
prove
you
it.
could still review with the farmers to
Oh.
make sure what we're trying to not, we
Right,
don't
I
wanna
think-
regulate their
exactly.
Oh, yeah,
activities.
no, but
And-
We don't want the things that,
We don't
I
want a
think that
banquet
you just
facility on a
mentioned,
farm.
those are
That's
fine, we
right.
don't even wanna touch that, we want,
Under the
allow
guise
that
of
to
a farm.
continue. It's the other things that are more
That's
concerning.
right, so my only concern is, and I get what you're saying, especially if you draft something and then, you know, we reconvene the group to say, what are your thoughts?
Mhm.
Because I just have concerns about drafting something, that binds them too
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
You know, there's
That was-
levels,
Yeah, that
So
was a clear
to-
message. We were heading down the path where, you know, hey, right, you have to notify you and do a permit, you know.
right,
But that's, we're not trying to do that.
Right.
If we took some bullet points, put it into a text amendment, we're gonna have a public hearing. They can all come and speak and we can make changes and,
right,
we're not,
Yeah.
something like that is, we can make significant changes on a public hearing text amendment for that
Mhm.
without having to redo it. Sometimes we do a text amendment, you know, if you wanna change it from 4, units to 100 units, totally different ballgame.
mhm,
But, we would have everybody's input, and we're starting off with something that, we feel is acceptable and, help, supports, these properties or farmers, and also protects the residents and
Mhm.
stuff, so, I'm saying that's a starting point. And I'm sure that folks for, Van Wilden, is his name?
Van Wilgens,
Yeah,
yeah.
Van Wilden, and some of the other folks that have accessories on their farms,
Right.
speak up during those public hearings and say, yeah, we like this, we don't like that, we can have that discussion.
Okay. So how do you want to proceed? Do you want to start at the next meeting, writing something? Do you want to create a subcommittee of 2 of you?
Well, let's
I don't know.
let's table that for
Okay.
now.
Okay.
And then after you get through your town planner's report and, maybe what's coming up in the next week or two, or in the next couple of meetings, then we can see if we could spend, maybe a half hour to an hour, you can share that, people can
Mhm.
do some work prior to meetings, then we can throw it all together.
I thought we got that one pretty
We did a lot of work.
pretty
on
far
it.
along. And there was a lot of, we went back with that Attorney Pellegrino, and then I think that last revision, all those lineouts, I thought was starting to head in the right direction. That was my recollection. I can't
agree.
remember exactly what it said, but I think we can look at that
Yeah,
and
we can
say,
look at
that should, to me, that's at least a starting point.
Yeah.
And then incorporate,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think your comments probably are in there
Well,
already.
his thing was they wanted outdoor events up to like 35 or 40 or something like that.
Yeah,
So
so-
that part.
But the starting point,
Okay,
we
there's a
could
lot of
say,
good
well,
stuff there.
clearly, that was,
Yeah.
37 is not, it's too many.
Yeah, there was good stuff in there, so. if
There
we-
was good stuff in there, yeah.
There were things that we could.
It started from you, actually, at the starting point, and it built upon that, so, yeah, we'd spent a lot of time on that, so.
So maybe in the next meeting, we could share some of the things, bullet points, if everybody has them, we can kind of collect them, and then we can, if we can get a copy in our package
Sure.
for the next meeting of that previous amendment,
Okay.
and we can all take a look at that, and then we can have a conversation.
Okay.
All right.
Here, just add real quick on that. To make the clear distinction on events, or this is focusing on things that don't complement the farming practice. So this would be something that is just using it as like a venue rather than complementing or showcasing.
I don't think we're gonna be able to do that, because then you start getting to spot zone. So we're gonna have to be careful with that. We're gonna have.
Well, I mean, like,
well,
not, yeah, well,
Well, there was
So
that
there's that
verbiage,
conflict.
There's a
agricultural
difference
events
between-
and
yeah.
non-agricultural events. So I don't know if the attorney can weigh in on verbiage, but I think that's one direction we went in was, to kind of help
Like, does it showcase
Former
that
things.
face
Your,
of the
your
farm?
point is if you have a beer and food tasting,
Not even that.
something
it's-
versus a wedding, right?
Well, not even that. It's like we had a few centennial parties for the farms that we had in town so many years ago, and celebrating the farm.
See that?
So that's celebrating the farm.
Yeah.
Whereas rather than, like you said,
Yeah.
we
Not
want
every
weddings
wedding
every
type of
weekend.
thing.
Right, well, we can get into it a little more, but some of the bullet points has to do with noise.
Yeah.
And that whether it's on a farm, venue, whatever it is, it's quality of life kind of things, not specific to non-agricultural. I'm not using that distinction. I'm using it as,
No matter, where you.
yeah,
live,
I'm
watch them.
quality of life across North Branford, not, not different, so.
You actually said it very well, was the police officer, I don't know his name. He had about 10 items that were concerning to the police department. It included noise, traffic, a whole bunch of things. Large crowds on,
Well, when
every
people-
weekend, it's like, it's
And
like
I
a college
agree,
frat.
when people choose to live in a farm town, you're choosing to live next to, a more rural lifestyle and not a banquet facility.
Right.
So it's not like, again, the direction we're going in to protect the residents is looking to preserve, somebody who wants to live next to a farm like versus, having a banquet facility running a wedding.
I got that covered too. I got you covered, Tricia.
Even though there's some people that they want less farms on the
Oh, that's entertaining.
survey.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
So this is an addition to the agenda, sorry, just, someone could amend it to review the budget for fiscal year 2020.
I move to amend the agenda to review the budget for something in
Fiscal
2020.
year.
Fiscal year 2020.
I can tell right now, the town council did not give us enough. I mean, I didn't get a pay raise anyway.
No, I didn't get a bonus this
The
year.
pay is exactly the same as it was last year, and it's getting kind of ridiculous with the, with wage increases going up about 2.3 to 3.2 a month. I just don't know why we can't pass that down to us, on this committee.
What iPads?
And a company car.
Write that on.
Well, we do have a company car. We just probably can't drive it, but we
Right.
do have a company car. It's out there.
So the first page is a summary, so I would think that maybe let's just go through the line items. So if you go to the second page, you'll see under Planning and Zoning Commission, we have Janet's time for attending 25 meetings with the potential of extending 12 times at a rate of $25 each. And then this is to continue Tom Hogarty, our part-time zoning enforcement officer, the same number of hours with a slight increase, which is 2.5%, which is what we carried over for administrators. And court time is in there just as a standard.
Well, Tom gets a
placeholder.
two and we don't get anything. Tom, we're not really happy with
Then we have just technical supplies of $100, books and publications, $20. Under printing and under printing and binding, the one change is a request for printing the plan of conservation and development,
that. Okay.
which is not in the budget amount for my Lone and McBroom. So they are only providing an electronic copy.
Right.
One thing I will be talking with Anthony and Mike about in my budget meeting tomorrow is if I don't have to put this in next year's budget, that would be great. If there's money in the current year's budget, that would be even better.
Can we ask M&M if they can, how much it would cost to print X amount of copies for us? Because maybe they can do it cheaper, because maybe, I'm just
Right,
throwing it out there.
that's true. So I asked them for how many pages it would be so I could get a quote.
Yeah.
So that's how I based that's where I got the number of $500, was just based on not their pricing, but I called Tyco.
What's the quantity of them?
The number of pages,
Well, number of pages, how many copies do we need?
I said 25 copies,
And how many
and
pages do we need?
between 75 and 100 pages. And I said double-sided. color.
Double wait, how many pages again?
75 to 100, so I would say 100.
So when you say a page, you mean 50 sheets of paper front and back?
Correct,
Okay.
right.
Why do we need those printed out?
So I think it's important for people to have a document to refer back to and look at, especially with an action item and action plan. And I think I've got 25 copies because I think each town councilor needs one, each of you needs a paper copy, myself.
Is it available on the website though?
It would be,
Okay.
right.
That makes sense.
A copy to, say, like the Wetlands Commission, just maybe one copy for them.
Libraries.
Libraries, the land trust, the school, yeah. Economic development.
Yeah, ask them if they can give a quote, and I will check a couple of my sources.
Okay, that'd be great. And if I can, I will take it out of this year's budget.
And then, I mean, we're just gonna drop it into a binder, right? Or would it
That
be-
includes binding. That includes like a spiral bound.
Spiral bind. Good. That's a good way to get
Right, the other option is maybe just run the copies here.
Well, no.
But I don't know.
No, because then you start using the clicks.
Right,
Yeah, and
right.
disposables. No, I'll look a couple different
Okay.
options for us.
So legal notices, I've just kept that the same. The other thing I should have mentioned is that we have been asked to do a 0% increase across the board, just because of budgetary constraints. So the POCD is my only increase beyond the 2.5% salary increase. Professional development, that also, I have an increase there because my, actually, no, sorry. I have, in the planning department budget, I had to do an increase for my professional American Planning Association stuff, so that's not in this budget.
So what's the 300 for?
So that's for you all to attend,
Okay, yeah.
seminars.
Okay, yep.
And our membership to the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning is $90, so it's 90 and 210, which is 300. Then we have custodial, assistance for large public meetings.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes,
What does that entail?
the custodial.
Yeah, I mean, if we use a
So
school,
that-
aren't they already there?
Well, that was put in probably in 2016 maybe with the propane.
Oh, okay.
And it's just kind of been carried over because we were charged, I mean, that was an exception.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at 2483, that was the total, sorry. I just misread.
Oh, I
It's
see.
183, so I'm looking
Yes,
down, I go, wait,
yes.
hang on a second.
Right.
Okay, I got it, yep.
And then the last page is just an explanation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then if you look at the highlights from calendar year 2018, that's kind of interesting of all of the work that you all have done. So 8 site plans, 2 zoning regulation text amendments, which 2 were withdrawn, 3 amendments to the zoning map, 3 special use permits, 2 subdivisions. The ZEO investigated 77 complaints or violations. He issued 87 zoning permits, 28 certificates of zoning compliance, and many requests for information and site inspections. Then we had several 824 referrals, bond releases, 5-year extension to subdivision recordings. And then we have our objectives for 2019, which is, what's that?
And a brewery.
A brewery, a winery. Could've had bourbon, but I guess something happened on that one.
Winery is 2017.
What's that?
Winery is 2017.
Yeah. Same thing. Would somebody does anybody have any discussion on this? Besides our pay raise that we didn't get, which we'll have to pass this year, and maybe we can work with town council next time, but,
What do we, just need to accept or something?
yeah,
It's not approved, right?
no, accept.
Right.
You can, yeah.
So I move to accept the annual budget fiscal year 2020.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Alright.
Alright, so now, other business, we have 55.
Oh, do you have up for next meeting?
So the next meeting, we have a continuation of 28 Branford Road,
Yep. Anything else new?
and, no,
Okay,
nothing else new.
so that's good, because
393.
363, we'll have the public hearing March 7th.
Oh, that's
yes. So the only thing we're gonna really have is we'll have the, oh no, the moratorium.
Moratorium
Can we
application.
do it for next meeting?
We can have the application that I'll submit,
For, so
or
to
that
accept
you'll
that.
submit,
Okay.
right, or you'll accept.
So.
I'm sorry, I'm not good with addresses. What's 363 Totucket again?
The subdivision.
Oh, the fifth.
Yeah, it's 10.
Alright, so the only thing we'll have is the, application we just saw, 2019-1. And then, okay, so then maybe we can get into a little discussion on,
Farm events,
yeah,
okay.
alright. So if you wanna go into other business?
So at the last meeting, we talked about 55 Tommy's Path. This is the town-owned parcel
Right.
and the open space. So there are some outstanding
You
questions that I
wanted
had.
us to do the survey?
Yes.
Okay.
So there were some outstanding questions that I had to get back to you on. So Dave Nafis, who had done the who had done the survey for the adjacent property that was subdivided at 48 Tommy's Path, did provide a quote to complete a survey of the town's parcel, which is what we needed, or the land trust's attorney recommended or requested. That would be $1,800 for that survey. The other question was, how much money does the Planning and Zoning Commission have in the open space fund? That total is $210,624.74.
For this survey, it's only, one of the sites was already done because of the subdivide.
Yes.
So that's just for the remainders, right?
So it was for the town-owned parcel because there wasn't a proper survey done and a proper description of the parcel because the town took it through foreclosure, and it seemed like there were some steps that had been missed along the way.
So
So-
do we also ask whether this is gonna be common occurrence on anything we transition over to them?
That we have to have I'd like for them to come in and talk with you about that.
Right.
Yeah, I have a concern about we're setting precedent in that
Yes.
we're paying for a survey for this particular department. Anybody else that needs a survey is gonna come to us and say, well, you do it because of,
Right.
you do it for other departments.
That's why they need to be very clear about their reasons, like, if they wanna make sure
Yeah, I mean,
there's
look,
title and.
We're trained, this is our property, so it's not, this is not like, we're not gonna do it for anybody else, this is our property, so
Well,
I mean.
I think
you know,
the difference though, to Ron's point, is that the survey would be done on property that then would be transferred over to the land trust, so the town wouldn't even benefit
Yeah,
really
there's no benefit to the
from
town.
that survey.
Oh, I'm just saying,
Right.
if the town wants, if the town wants to deed it over, I mean, and they need a survey, so we say no, then it stays with us, I mean,
Oh, I'm gonna have to abstain because my property abuts it, and to have a survey would benefit me. So,
well, you can, that's fine, you can
No,
still.
I-
you
I-
can- no,
you
you
know.
still, yeah. Go ahead, Trish.
Question, because I don't have a lot of knowledge. What is the survey? Just to look at the property lines, or to look at, are there liens and deeds and title searches to make sure there's no, what is a survey?
Survey that we're talking about is a land survey to properly identify the extent of the parcel, so to know exactly where the property lines are, the
measure.
length from point to
And we
point.
don't know that right now, or there's
Not
a
exactly.
debate on the exact lines?
Correct, we don't have a survey for the town-owned parcel. Complete survey.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, on other town parcels, do we have surveys on them? Is it, or is it, I mean,
So
I'm not-
case by case,
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that, or?
I don't know, I don't
Okay.
think that we have them for every town-owned parcel, especially if they're older, they were taken through foreclosure.
And we've given them town-owned land before, so again, why is this different?
I don't know when the last time was that we gave them land.
Did we give it to them on the,
We use
on 17?
the typical part is when you have like
well, last few,
The
it's been a subdivision
Yes.
that's already
Yes.
surveyed.
Exactly.
And there's
So,
10% of
right,
it has
right.
to be open space, and we realize it's contiguous with something else that benefits them. And then we say, we don't want it, you want it, and they say, well, it's contiguous with our land conservation area, so yeah, we want this, but it's already surveyed.
Exactly, so,
But
right,
this is
it's
So it's-
being surveyed
so we're
as
not
part
s-
of
yeah,
a new
subdivision.
development,
Yeah,
subdivision.
So are they thinking
That's,
somebody
that's
could-
how it's happened most
We
of
just
the
wanna
time.
make sure that they know what their property is, so there's no liability issues probably down the road between property owners and themselves. They obviously wanna protect themselves, I'm
Yeah.
sure, I mean, there's not, they don't have, I'm not sure how much money they have for this kind of stuff,
Ron's been
But-
dumping on the land anyway, so
so.
get that
But-
border established.
I mean, if this
It goes
is,
at
if
night.
this is a one-time event, I mean, if, and there's a benefit for us to transition over the property, and then, if Franny, you know, tree falls or something happens, he has to take care of that, then the $1,800 is worth it,
Yeah.
I feel. If this is
No
gonna
liability or
be,
anything.
if there's, you know, I mean, if it's a case-by-case basis, then we do it by case-by-case. So I mean, I don't know if I think maybe we should need some additional input. Like you said, there's a lot of money in there, and that money's gonna be, it's for some good use.
Right.
And if Franny or town council, whoever thinks that the value of transitioning over to the land trust is worth the $1,800 to transition it, I mean, I would consider.
Have we said we're not willing and see what they say?
Yeah, you know, my
Yes,
Well,
well,
they did, they said that.
they've run through that scenario of if, you know, we can't provide a survey and, guarantees that there's no infringements on that land, then they may not be interested. And so then, the default would be that it goes into a homeowners association, which may not be the end of the world. It's still open space, and the town still has a large parcel that's open and available to the public.
What do you mean homeowner association? Help me on that one.
So the 3 lots that were created at
Right.
48 Thomas Path, they would become the owners of that open space that was created.
And what does that mean, and what does that mean for them?
It's a small parcel.
But what does it mean for them to be the home?
They would own it, and there may even be some, I'd have to talk with the assessor, but maybe some tax I mean, it would be open space, so they couldn't develop it. It would just mean that it's.
Is that part of like the deed? Because we can't just tell them what, we're just gonna give it back.
What's the part we tried to
I'm
make
just
it
missing
survey?
some stuff, or can we? Like, if they, so you have these
Yep.
3 houses, do they know that that property could be their responsibility?
Well, that's a question that I need to go back to them with. You know, that's where they have their attorney, and
Is this?
And then we don't wanna do, the $1,800 would be best used doing
To
the
avoid
survey and then
more-
going to court with
yeah,
the landowner.
more
So
drama.
if that even becomes an issue,
they
Yeah.
didn't seem to, the developer didn't seem to have an issue with it going into a homeowners association. And I think if there's any time to do it, now's the time to do that.
oh, well, yeah, I'm on board with that. So who else can we get should we get input from?
Well, we could have the land trust come in.
Yeah,
Let's have the land trust come in, but
At
I'm
the
saying
next
from,
meeting.
like, can we, like Franny's, you know,
Sure.
if it's, is it gonna cost him $900 a year?
Okay.
Is, you know.
Right, and ultimately, if the $1,800 is what you'd like to spend, we would have to go to town council to have
Right.
an approval to use that money. So it's not, you know, it doesn't end here.
Right.
So explain to me why are we involved in, because I'm hearing, you know, Public Works won't have to maintain it or do anything, so it should come out of Public Works's budget as opposed to ours. I still think we're setting precedent.
So we're involved, to answer that question, because of the creation of the 3-lot subdivision at 48 Tommy's Path.
So why wasn't that surveyed at that time? Do we-
55 Tommy's Path wasn't surveyed, it's the town-owned property.
Right,
property.
okay, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused now, because I don't even know what
There's-
parcel are we talking about?
Yeah.
There's
That
two
the land
parcels.
trust is
There's two
taking?
parcels.
Is it this
The
little
one that
part that
became
the
from the
three
subdivision.
lots
Five
will
or 48?
create?
Both,
And then the town owned as well?
yes.
Okay,
That was the goal.
so the town, how big is the town owned?
The
Is it a
town,
large area?
it is, so here's the outline.
Alright.
So Gary, even though with that subdivide beforehand, that was just created because
Can you show
of,
me?
they did the subdivide.
1 inch
The
is 250
old piece,
feet, so it's 500.
I think is what Ron's trying to say, why is that old piece getting thrown onto us?
Yeah, Ron, what's going on here?
So there was
Does it
the.
even touch the road? Does
Right.
it even touch the road?
No.
This is it, right here? Oh, this is it. I thought you-
So the reason why was with the creation of the 3 lots, the approval with the required open space, which is 1,700 square feet, so less than half of an acre of open space was created as a result of that 3-lot subdivision. So here's Tommy's path, here are the 3 lots, here's the open space that was created.
Oh, okay.
This is the town piece that you see outlined there.
So this needs to be
And
surveyed.
so the land trust said, we would be interested in this, but we really want the larger piece, because less than half of an acre doesn't give them
Right.
anything. It does provide road frontage and access onto the town land, which is the benefit,
Mhm.
but otherwise, they didn't want just this one piece. So that
Oh,
was
they
where we
want
were
all
trying
that.
to transfer the town-owned and start this whole movement of, you know, transferring some wet, open space that the town owned.
So how
To
big
the
is
land
that town
trust.
piece?
The town, I have to look, I wanna say about 10 acres.
So we would be giving them 10 acres.
So in our current plan of conservation development, does it look to do things like this? And not give them $1,800 necessarily? but
Right,
To
right.
assist in
Yeah, the
facilitate transfer
Right,
of this to
especially
make-
since
so
the land
it's-
trust has
it's
become
in our
more
best
active.
interest, right?
Right,
It's
and
in our
that's where,
plan
to
of
Ron's
conservation
point,
and
it's like
development.
they're being given something, it's a gift.
That's a lot of,
So-
that's a lot of land.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's either we're gonna, I mean, it's gonna be.
Can we share the cost? Can Public Works throw some in? Can Land Trust throw some in?
Well, that's where
I-
if we have,
Well,
if
well,
Teamwork
I mean,
makes the
let's
dream
not-
work.
1,800's not,
That's not, I mean.
if any, I'm not worried about the money so much.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm necessarily worried about precedent, but the precedent's more than the money to me.
Yeah, that's.
I agree.
I have to think about that.
Now, we gave land to the land trust, that development down Middletown Avenue
Yeah.
where they put a lot of,
Yeah.
and we gave them the land,
Mhm.
and there was no problem with them
Good.
surveying it and doing their own
Because
thing.
they did it all at one time. They did all the surveying work up front. This isn't done like that. This is after the fact. The little
has kinda
piece,
never
the
been
little
done.
piece, the piece of property we own is the issue. That was foreclosed on. It's never been properly surveyed. The
See,
other
that's a
piece,
good
the
data
Tommy's path where the homes are, that was
properly
surveyed, you know, that it looked like that's surveyed and has got property mark and boundary markers on it.
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's just,
Let's take a minute and talk to
Okay.
them.
It's just,
Right.
it's just that.
It's never been
our-
properly surveyed.
Right.
So what's around that
how
10
much-
acres?
how
More
much-
residential?
18.
all residential,
How much?
Yes.
10
and
acres?
open space.
10 acres.
This is me.
10 acres.
So where's the
with
open
road
space?
access.
This?
Right. Because the only thing
This
is,
is
they're,
the
they're not
10
getting any money
acres
out
he's
of the
talking
property,
about.
so it's not like they're,
Yeah.
there's
And
no
this is
benefit
Yeah.
for
The
them
three,
financially.
the only thing that
So then
they're
that,
concerned about
that
is.
does
not
kind of make
developing.
sense. If it's never been surveyed,
Right.
then that,
Right.
like, why can't that just be said? It's never been surveyed, and that's a good data point, and that does make sense. Other land we've given them has been surveyed. I don't understand why it hasn't been
This
simplified down to
this
that.
property that was foreclosed, there's no map in the public records?
Correct, not a complete survey. Everything,
Usually the data.
we've looked back, there's nothing, it's all
That's
pieces,
unique compared to other,
it's not,
I'm not nervous about precedent with that piece of data.
you know, there's some information
No,
from 1950 going back, but it's not a complete
So,
survey.
so can we, some of the takeaways, can we?
Have the land
can we-
trust.
Well, we'll have land trust come in, so we can get a better idea on that. But can, maybe you email Franny and say,
Yes.
you know, what would your, you know, what are the pros and cons of having it remain as North Branford be the property holder on that.
And those reasons that it's never been surveyed, I'm not as nervous about setting a bad precedent.
And as far as the money goes, I mean, whether it comes out of Public Works, they have their budget, we have this land trust, we have this open space fund, and, I mean, this is open space. I know it's surveying, but, I mean, it would be my recommendation, that's where it should come from.
When I did
Are we
talk,
allowed to use the funds for this?
I did talk with the town attorney,
Okay.
and they looked at the state statute, because it doesn't say explicitly that it has to be purchase of, it just says for the use of open space, and
Okay.
so he thought that the surveying would fall under that.
If I recall correctly, they also want a guaranteed deed,
Yes,
and,
so, right, this isn't the only request.
right,
So
this,
they do want to.
And the town attorney said there's no way we're giving a guaranteed deed.
Well,
What's a
it might
guaranteed
be a
deed?
moot point, right?
they guarantee, the seller
It might be a moot point if they
guarantees,
say,
there's no
Right.
liens,
that's
there's no
we-
reason
Yes.
why.
all or nothing,
They
then,
can't
Yes.
do
okay,
that.
nothing.
Right.
So, I mean, so before we even have them come in,
Yeah.
tell
Okay,
them
I'll
about
talk
the
with
deed.
Franny.
More or
Yeah,
Yes.
but talk to.
I did.
about
My
the deed and
property-
say
Yeah.
if
I bought
they're-
my property
and then
from
if they
Joe
wanna
Selk.
come, We'll entertain that.
Yes.
I mean, and
I have a
at the
title
end of the day,
search.
if we survey and they don't want it for this other issue about guaranteed deed, I still think that's great data to have, that a piece of town property was surveyed properly, so, I mean, that is in line, it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
So, I just gotta, so, on the, sort of on the side note, the 220,000 we have in the opens, when is the last time that have used that fund for anything? Which I don't think I can't even recall ever doing it.
So, all I know is I believe the purchase of the Swycheck property was one time, but I don't
When was
know.
that?
I don't even,
90s?
Wow.
Oh, I was,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a long
80s,
time ago.
90s?
Okay, I was gonna say pre-me. So unless I don't recall, but, right, so the plan, conservation development, we should make reference to something. You know,
Okay.
look at something,
Okay.
I mean, if time to look at purchasing a property or potentially looking at something, I think this 10-year span would be the time to do it with the money in there.
Okay. So moving on, the last item.
Wait, you just had
Oh.
a sigh, what? Nothing's ever easy with us, what?
No, if the town foreclosed on it, there'd be back taxes, right? Or the taxes are written off, or how does that
I
work?
don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure of the details of that.
So it still sounds like there's more to come on that.
So this item B under other business, discussion of the possible zoning text amendment regarding the setback requirement for signs in industrial zones. So in reviewing 28 Branford Road and their sign location, where they originally had proposed it on their draft plan, it was only, I think, 4 feet or something from the property line. In the regulations, which I'll read to you, it actually requires that they be 50 feet back, but only in industrial zones. So it says other districts.
all industrial zones?
Yes. So, except as hereinafter provided, signs shall observe all setbacks required for buildings and other structures, which is 50 feet. So in an industrial zone. It just seems very far back. And, you know, that's different than what's required in other
I
zones.
don't think any industrial zones have it 50 feet.
So in the business zone,
Put in a building.
the reason why I thought a text amendment made sense is because it doesn't match, I mean, there's a reason for it, I guess. They were treating the industrial zone differently. But in a business zone, may extend to within 10 feet of the street line. So one thought was to possibly change it to a 10-foot to match the business district setback requirement.
Why do you think it was put at 50 feet for industrial? Anybody? Like, is it just one sign, or every business can have their own sign, and we don't want a bunch of different signs at the? Like, industrial could be one business or many different businesses.
Well, I mean, the reason why, I mean, I'm gonna make a speculation, the reason why 50 feet is because you see a big building, you look up on this, you look 50 feet, and you see that's the building I'm looking for. In an industrial, in a business zone, you can have potentially, let's just say, 10 businesses, you know, in an area. So you want the sign closer so you can see, because the sign can only be so big,
Yeah.
so you can see all the individual businesses. I'm just gonna make the
No,
assumption that's how it's
It's what you're
created.
trying to solicit more retail and
Right.
customers, where industrial is less.
Now, the only thing with the industrial though is now you start getting into, I mean, is it gonna affect sight lines? You got trucks and cars and different things going on. I mean, no, it's business, and, you know, I'm not sure. Like, so if you move, especially, let's talk about this property, with medical
Do they want a
buildings out.
sign?
Yes.
So the only thing I'm thinking is that if you put that signs either direction, you could be blocking out the sight line to coming up around the corner or coming down the other way, because you know, I think you can see forever, so looking north.
Right, well, they would
So-
have to, for each property, right, they would have to make sure that they comply with sight lines and everything.
But again, but we don't wanna see, I don't wanna see it, I mean, this is my opinion. I don't wanna see a sign that labels every single doctor.
Yeah, that's
If
what
it
I'm
wants to say
wondering.
North Branford Medical.
The Connecticut, what's it,
or-
Connecticut Health and Wellness Center?
Yeah.
it's called?
Something like that, I just don't wanna see every doctor
Correct.
labeled out there,
That's what I was wondering.
you know.
Essentially, you don't wanna see like, what you expect in front of a business zone that lists all that there.
And I'll just use a personal experience, where I go to now, it looks like a condo village, and you know that you're going to building A, and when you get to building A, it tells you, there's a, directory
Yes.
on the corner of building A, and then it kind of directs you to what side of the building to go on. You know, it's like one east, one north, and they gotta go. But I'm just saying that, but the entrance only has, you know,
Here's the name of
medical
this.
park.
Yes,
That's
and
all
that's
it
what
is.
they had planned for that specific location. So to your point, in an industrial zone, it says on any lot, one sign attached to the ground is permitted, and such sign shall not exceed 50 square feet in area, nor a height of 10 feet. So maybe what a text amendment could include is you could come within, say, 10 feet of the property line, so long as the square footage is
Adjusted based on how
12
close it is to the.
12 square feet, which matches the business zone.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're closer to the road,
Yeah,
if you're say
smaller
10
sign.
feet matching the business zone, then the square footage of the sign can only be 12 square feet, which also matches the business zone.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
and are they requesting it, or is it something you think?
Well, Tom Hogarty looked at it, and, you know, we talked about them applying for a variance, but there really is no hardship.
Right. And what did Tom think? What was his?
He thought a text amendment, we didn't get into the details of what the text amendment would say,
Okay.
but.
But okay. All right.
Does
He's
it
a lot
have
of,
to-
he's got a lot of experience on it, especially when it comes to signage, so I would take.
And I mean, thinking about other properties, so it's interesting, I don't know what Honeywell has.
Just
There's a
one
lot of-
sign that says Honeywell.
There's a,
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Right, but I don't
can-
know-
I know a lot
I
of
don't know if they're 50
industrial.
feet back.
Yes.
I know a lot of industrial
You
zones.
think?
I don't, there's a lot, at least intuitively, I think, I can envision a lot that don't have it. 50 feet, that's a long ways away.
I
Honeywell's
don't,
not
is there
50 feet back.
is there a sign at the storage? Yes, they're not 50 feet back.
No, they're right on this road, that's what I'm
But
saying.
that was existing, that's been there forever,
Yeah,
because I
sure.
had a battle with them about that
Yeah.
sign.
I'm not,
But
and Honeywell too.
Honeywell, that was,
It's not 10
Pickers,
feet.
what was
Yeah,
it?
Pickard, yeah.
It's not 10 or 20 feet, so, I mean, it's more than.
And the other industrial, parcels like John's Refuse, I don't know if they have a sign, but the other ones across the street, they access it from a separate driveway, so this sign setback doesn't really matter for them, like Capasso's and, so I'm just thinking about the other industrial zones that this might
Does the
impact.
text amendment have to talk about sightline restrictions and stuff at this point, or is it just that we'll review that as a site plan approval or whatever?
Because when the DOT looks at it, they're looking at the site plans from the they're not looking at any, you know, I mean, They're not
That's a
looking
good
to
point.
see, I mean, I would assume they're looking at a plan, but if that plan doesn't show trees, all of a sudden they put trees in there, all of a sudden, you know, does the sightline, you know, affects the sightline. So we would need some kind of confirmation that,
But I don't think any of our regulations speak to sightlines
Yeah,
right now.
okay.
Well, hold on. No sign shall be located or maintained so as to be a hazard to traffic or pedestrians,
Hmm.
to obstruct any door, window, ventilation system, or fire escape or exit, or to cause any other hazard to the public health or safety.
so we
that
know,
kinda covers it.
so we know their sightline, cause he shows the drawing. So if they put a sign inside that, I mean, we should be able to, I mean, we can question that. As far as the text amendment, I'm not sure how everybody thinks, but if we were to consider one, you know, change in the size within, you know.
So it's appropriate for how
Yeah.
close it is.
And would it be 10 feet?
That's
Can it
what the
be-
business zone has right
Do
now.
we, how, and I'm gonna just throw out there, instead of 10 feet, I'm just gonna throw a number, how about 20 feet?
How about, how can we just put at the discretion of the planning board?
We can do that. I think we can do that.
50 feet or at the 50 feet or?
I think you can do that, but you would have to say, have conditions that it would meet, or at the discretion of the commission, so long as, I don't, you know, you'd have to
Yeah,
have other
yeah.
kind of qualifiers.
Mhm.
It's like where a fence is required unless there's existing landscape that creates a buffer.
Gotcha.
What do you think?
I mean,
Yeah, a quick question on that is, now, there's the paved road and, like, let's say a state road. Let's use Middletown Avenue. And the state would own so many feet on either side, correct?
Yes,
So are we measuring from
property line.
the property line? So if the state owns 10 feet or 15 feet, now we're talking 10 feet additional.
Right. That's the other hardship, you know, for them, is that it may be 50 feet from the property line, but it's really 70 feet from the
Right.
pavement.
You know, my big concern is sightlines.
Yeah, same here, I'm not.
Well, we could, again, we address that as when they put their site
I
plan.
just don't
shows
like
the sign.
arbitrary numbers.
Well, I mean, as far as, that they're always gonna be arbitrary, because it,
No, not always, if we were just like 20 and like, why not 10?
no, you get, if we leave it at
To match
10, I mean,
business.
but if you do it at 10, it still affects the sight line, you can't put it. at
No,
10.
yeah, correct, yeah, of course, safety
Yeah.
comes first, but like, just to be like 30, cause that, I don't.
I mean, if it matches up the business zone, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a text amendment, it's
And it's
a
changing
public
size.
hearing, and we can make changes at that time, so.
And would we wipe out the, you know, 50 feet bigger sign, or would it be an or? You can do 50 feet bigger, or,
I think it
It's
should,
up to you.
I think it should be an or. Put it as an or, and then
Yeah.
if we can change it, you know.
cause some people might do something big and
Go
bad,
back,
Yeah.
yeah.
so then we'd have to change it again. Okay.
All right, anything else?
That's all.
Right.
Ron.
I need to call you Ronnie, I never did before, Ron.
I know, you called Ronnie a couple times.
To be honest with you,
I did not.
everybody
No.
calls me Ronnie.
Oh, really? I'm sorry for calling you Ron for all those
Mr.
years.
Sienna, Mr. Sienna.
I was never corrected.
Hey, seeing all items on the agenda covered for February 7th, I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
All right, I have a question.
Hang on.
Yeah.
You said you were adjourned.